Okay. All right, well, it's my pleasure to introduce the next speaker. Major General Mike Sullivan, United States Marine Corps, retired. I'll just, a quick note, he and I have enjoyed a very, for me, I don't know about for him, but for me, lucrative and enlightening email exchange based off of our relationship in WACE. And it's just absolutely a pleasure for me to be able to introduce our General Sullivan.
Thank you. What I'm going to do today is talk to you a little bit completely opposite of what Vince talked to you about. This is the high end. This isn't the coin. This is, in fact, the most expensive military acquisition program ever put on by our country, ever conducted. And what it is, it's the Joint Strike Fighter for the F-35 Lightning II. You all remember the Lightning from the Second World War, the P-38. This is the Lightning II. Okay, what it is, it's a multi-role joint service aircraft, and that means it's 70% structural, the same, and about 80% avionics-wise for all three airplanes. Okay, the Air Force, CTOL, they have the standard airplane, but they're getting it stands for Conventional Takeoff and Landing, just like the airplane you flew in here. Takes off, runs down the runway, comes in, lands on the runway, and rolls out. The Marine version is STOVL, and I'll get into that, or how I got involved with STOVL in just a minute. But STOVL means short takeoff, 300 feet, so you can have a little tiny boat or just a road or whatever, and a vertical landing. Now, when you have a STOVL airplane, it means it's going to be smaller because it's hard to get engines to put out that much power, and it's not going to carry as much gas, and some of the drawbacks would be range compared to a CTOL type airplane. And then you got the Navy version, which is a tailhook that flies off aircraft carriers and has catapults. And of course, that's the high end. You got to have the arresting gear, and you got to have those catapults. They cost big bucks. And of course, but what they can do, they can have a much bigger airplane with longer range. Okay, so what does the F-35 offer? I'm not sticking up for it or anything else because I'm actually mad at it this time at what they're doing with it. But it is, without a doubt, the best fighter aircraft in the world today. Not performance-wise, because you don't need performance. But what it is, it's VLO, right here. Very low observable. There's only one other airplane like it, and that's the F-22 Raptor. We built 187 of them in this country. 3 of them have crashed. We got 184. They stopped to buy. The Air Force wanted 360, but they were $258 million a piece, and it's a gold watch. We've had it 5 or 6 years. It's never fired a shot. But it's VLO, very stealthy. The Russians have a T-50. The Chinese have a T-16. Both of them are experimental. The Chinese, everything they had, they got from the Clinton administration. They got missile data and radar from them. Both of those airplanes are a long ways off. The next thing is the ASA radar. Stands for Active Electronic Supported Array. And what that does, you used to have the feed horns in the radar. You'd point and a blip would show up. Now they don't have that anymore. You point whatever, it goes, it's just a flat array, and it goes to that section, and there's so much power in it that you can spot these airplanes way off, and it doesn't emit. So the bad guys, if they're trying to pick up your radar, they won't see it. And that's very expensive. Today we only have, we have the F-22, the F-35, the 2 versions, the latest versions of the F-18, the E and the F, they have it, and the latest version of the F-15, they have it. So it's a great advantage. Now they're 5th generation airplanes. Again, we have both of them, the only 2 5th generation airplanes that are operational. And the F-35 really isn't operational. The Marines have 10 or 12 of them at Yuma now. And this airplane, it can only go, it's restricted no more than a 60-degree dive, no more than 450 knots, no more than 6 Gs. Not because it can't do it, but it's because NavAir System has put restrictions on it, because this was the first airplane we ever bought. We bought before we flew it. In other words, today we've only completed 30% of the checks, all the tests that were supposed to have happened that you usually do before you buy an airplane. Now, these things can do it. So what do we have? We have this Marine squadron sitting out there at Yuma. I mean, you might as well be sitting out there in a Cessna 172. Can't drop bombs, you can't do anything until they get cleared to do it, because they've got the #1 software package. They're going to get the #2 software package in December of supposedly 2015 if it doesn't slip. And then they'll be able to do all this stuff. Now, they've got a helmet in the airplane. The helmet costs $250,000. A helmet. You know, to go fight, put on, go fly your airplane. Supposedly, when they get all the magic in this airplane, and it's the way it's supposed to be, in 2017 to 2019, that helmet could cost $600,000. Now, you know, I'm a taxpayer just like you are. I'm looking at some of this stuff. Well, what are we going to use it against? I mean, are we going to fight the Soviets? Are we going to fight the Chinese? I think the only chance we have of anybody being dumb enough to have a war like that might be the North Koreans. And I'm not worried about it. We got plenty of airplanes that can stop them now. So, but anyhow, we have to have these kind of systems. Okay, so let me tell you how I got involved in this stuff and why I'm a huge supporter of Stovall airplane. First of all, you buy airplanes by the pound. That's the smallest one. So it's going to be cheaper. But let me tell you about some of the capability. When I was the commanding general of the 2nd Marine Aircraft Wing, we had, this is during the Cold War, we had the Norway, we call it the northern flank. That was our responsibility. 2nd Marine Division, 2nd Marine Air Wing. We had caves over there with pre-position gear, everything in there. Okay, our fighter squadrons, our Hornets, could fly into 6 different bases in Norway. Our Harriers could operate from 90 different sites. 90. That's called flexibility. You buy an aircraft carrier, they're $2 billion or more. We have 11 of them, which I think they've taken 2 because of sequestration. They've taken 2 out. We've got 9, may go to 8, but we still have 11 that are capable of going out to sea. But with our L-class ships, L means it's an amphibious ships, we can fly our Harrier. We have 11 of those. And you can put 20 Harriers on those things. So that just doubles your capability. So as far as price goes, that's what you want. Well, when I started out, first time I got involved in this was at the Naval War College in 75 or 6, and the F-18 was still on the drawing board along with the Advanced Harrier. And being a fighter pilot my whole life, you know, I had to make a decision. But I said, for the Marines, we need to have the Stovall airplane because providing it has the performance. What happened in the Second World War in Guadalcanal, the Navy pulled out with their carriers, left the Marines there without any air capability until we got our squadrons ashore, the Cactus Air Force. So we said that'll never happen again. And the only way that you can guarantee this is if you keep your Marines on amphibious ships with your ground forces. And this happened in the first Gulf War. The Navy sitting out there 400 and 500 miles away with their aircraft carriers. We're sitting in there 40 miles with our Harriers. And so they could fly and do multiple sorties. And they're using them today. I mean, it's a great airplane. So here's how it all started. When I retired out of the Marine Corps, I was involved, the Warfighting Center, with necking down. When I came in the Marine Corps, we had 8 different types of fighters, models that we were flying. When I left it, we had the Harrier, the EA-6, and the F-18. We're necking down to 1 for price and for capability, a fighter attack airplane. So when I retired, I went to DARPA. You ever heard of DARPA? A lot of you probably have. The Defense Research Project Agency. They've come up with all this new stuff. There was a retired Marine colonel in there who was a Harrier pilot who just got his PhD. And so we got together and we said, okay, we did this for the Marines, nobody else. We needed a new airplane because my son, who's now an F-18 squadron commander, Marine, is flying the same airplanes I flew, the same bureau numbers. That's how old they are. So we have to do something. So what do we want to get? We don't want a supersonic Harrier. We want a hovering Hornet. Why not a supersonic Harrier? Because it didn't carry as much gas, and also the nozzles. They're on the side of the airplane. There's 4 of them, 2 hot nozzles, 2 cold, and when you're up and away, they're back just like a regular airplane, and when you're hovering and stuff, they're pointed down. Well, we found out in the Gulf War it was like a magnet. I mean, those things just heat-seeking missiles love to go right in the middle of the airplane. Of course, it doesn't do that on an F-18. It goes to tailpipe, and we got hit in the tailpipe, but we could bring the airplanes home. Well, anyhow, we went around trying to sell this airplane for the Marines. Well, in 1995, Congress got hold of it. We knocked on a couple doors, and they said, okay, we agree, we got to have a new fighter. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to have a competition, and they have to build one Stovall. See, the Navy and the Air Force do not like Stovall airplanes. One, the Navy doesn't like it because it threatens their ship. It threatens the big deck where you have tail hooks and all. They do not like a Harrier going in there, and because it changes everything. We have 100% boarding rate in the Harrier aboard ship. If you don't catch that wire on a regular airplane, you go around again. You try doing this at night, and you're out of gas, and if you don't get on there at a certain point, you have to go up to a tanker. One of your kind of airplanes, this little tiny thing, you're trying to find it, and he's got a little hose out the back, and you got to plug in to get some more gas to get back aboard ship. That's Harrier and landed on the ship. So anyhow, we're big fans of Stovall. The Air Force doesn't like it because it wasn't supersonic, it doesn't look hot, you know, some of those things. So anyhow, Congress says, okay, we're going to have this competition, but you got to build a Stovall one for the Marines. So they did. They had this competition. 3 teams, McDonnell Douglas, Boeing, and Lockheed were involved. I was a consultant at that time for McDonnell Douglas, and their heart wasn't in it. They didn't want to do it. They didn't think it was going to fly because they didn't think the Navy and the Air Force would support it. And they said, already we're the world leaders in Stovall. We got the Harrier. That'll be the end of it, so on. Well, anyhow, Boeing got in this thing. They had this pregnant guppy they flew. I don't know how it worked, but thank God it was so ugly that it didn't get the job. Lockheed got the job. Now, they got, in 2001, they made the decision to pick Lockheed, and in 2006, the first F-35 flew. And then the Marine version is different from the two Stovall, or the Navy and the Air Force versions just had regular engines in them. The Marines have the same engine, but behind the cockpit they have a fan. And so when they only use it for vertical landings. And so it spools up, it couples the fan to the engine. And these airplanes, they have 43,000 pounds of thrust coming up. The Hornets I flew had 36,000 pounds. So, I mean, it's a great advancement. Now here's the thing, performance-wise. Well, okay, so they flew the first one. Now we're flying. The Marines have taken the first delivery last December. The Air Force just got their first one at Hill Air Force Base, operational. It's going to be a long time before they're able to operate them just like us. We're going to be at least December 15 before they're really operational, and not the way we'd like them. Okay, so what's for the future? Let's take a look at the costs. When I started out back in $95, the Air Force version was $30 million. Ours was $32 million. The Navy's was $35 million. Okay, they've had so many problems, so many cost overruns. The Marines picked theirs up in December of last year, the few they have, $158 million, and that's without any of the modern avionics stuff. Okay, supposedly, at the end, in this 2017, we're supposed to have 400 of them. And, you know, everybody's heard of sequestration. I think they're going to cut the buy. There's no way in God's green earth that we have a buy of 2,443 F-35s. I just don't believe it's ever going to happen. We can't afford it. How we're going to get that many of them. But supposedly, by 2017 to 2019, we'll have at least 400. And the U.S. Air Force model will cost 110, the Marines 120, and the Navy's 130. Again, you buy them by the pound. So that's the way it is. Okay, so what do we do for the future? Here we are. The airplane is not really operational. It's out there. Sequestration is going on. They can save a lot of money if they want. A lot of people have been shooting at it, just like they shot at the F-22, they shot at the V-22, the Osprey. So what's going to happen? Again, the Air Force would probably be happy if they cancel it, because they'd like to get more F-22s or something else, but I think they're stuck. They will end up getting some. The Marines, they could cancel the F-35B, and the Navy doesn't even want it. Their senior officers say, the guys that run the Navy, but if you talk to them, they're happy with the F-18, the Super Hornets. So what is going to happen? They're going to have to cut this budget someplace. So we're going to find out, and we're all going to watch this in the next year or so. The sequestration is going on now. They're going to cut all these. We have these people that work where I am, down at Cherry Point. We had a fleet readiness center that's the highest paid employees east of 95 in North Carolina. These are all high-tech people, and they're talking about furloughing them 26 days in the year. That's 10% of their salary. I mean, these are people living payday to payday, you know, with mortgages and everything else. I mean, something's going to happen. I don't know what. So the bottom line is, you know, you can write your congressman, do whatever you want to do, but I'm a big supporter. We need an airplane, but what I'd like to see is just get an airplane without all this magic in it, and with lower, because that's what you're paying for, these avionics. Now, does it work? That's the question. Well, I can tell you one thing, and this is sort of closed hole stuff. My son's squadron went and fought these airplanes. They were the first guys to get to fight them last March, down to Tyndall Air Force Base. That's where the big training squadron is for the Navy, Air Force, and Marines. And the Marines have one squadron of human now that stood up, and as I said, one airplane. But he got to fight against them in their F-18s. So, you know, I said, well, God, this is great. I asked him, I said, how'd you do? He said, one word, or one sentence, we never saw them, which tells you the stealth. That's what you're paying for. VLO, it works. Now, when they said, but the Air Force will say, this thing only goes 1.6, their version goes 1.7. All our airplanes, it's replacing 5 or 6 different airplanes, F-16s, 15s, 18s, Harriers, and A-10, and all of them except the A-10 and the Harrier go faster than this thing. But what they don't tell you is that with the stealth, I used to teach this stuff. In the history of air-to-air combat, 80% of the people shot down didn't even know the guy shooting them down was there. The first thing they knew, bullets were going by, or they heard whap, whap, whap as they were coming in. Now, we probably only shot down 500 airplanes in the history of the world with missiles. The Israelis